25 very common things that I bet you have in your home right now that's making your space feel smaller. It's making it feel cramped. These are things that I have either had or I have them now. So I'm going to share these mistakes as well as what you can do instead if you want to have a lighter, brighter, more open space. First one is something that many of us have, and maybe you don't have it on your counter, but I'm going to say having your microwave on your counter in your kitchen could be making your kitchen feel small and cluttered. Now, I have a microwave above my stove, and I'm not even telling you that that's the right solution. I'm actually going to suggest consider getting rid of your microwave. Now, I have not taken this step yet because mine's kind of built in, but when we redo our kitchen, I'm going to do it. I know a lot of you have even suggested that I do it. You have gotten rid of your microwave for health reasons. What I think you could do, because I do really like the convenience of just sticking my food in there, I instead would say, get yourself a toaster oven or an air fryer. They have really good glass air fryers. They don't have that nonstick coating. They're super healthy. I can link some really good ones that I've been researching and thinking about. Number 2, I have shared this one before and a lot of you got mad about it, but some of you agree and some of you don't even have this, and it's get rid of your coffee table. I think that the coffee table kind of messes with the flow unless you have a really big living room and you're trying to denote different spaces within the living room. I don't necessarily think you need it. When we moved into this house, we never even got a coffee table. We had a little baby. We knew we were going to have another one, and I just didn't want any cracked heads on the coffee table. So instead we got a fabric ottoman that kind of doubles as storage, and we never put it back. My oldest is now 9 years old and we still don't have a coffee table. If you feel that you need tables, I think you could do something like maybe some side tables, just smaller little tables that don't really get in the way of the living room. Because if you've got a small living room to begin with, I just think these coffee tables, I go to the store and look at them sometimes, they're getting bigger and bigger every year. Okay, this list is in no particular order, but let's go back into the kitchen. And I'm going to tell you, if you have one of those big clunky coffee makers on your kitchen counter, I don't mean the espresso ones. I'm talking about those plastic coffee makers. I kind of have an ulterior motive in here because I'm going to tell you to get rid of this. And the reason primarily why you should get rid of it is because you're ingesting microplastics and chemicals with every cup of coffee that you make, but it's also taking up a lot of counter space. I'm going to suggest you instead go back to the percolator. Before the 70s, everyone used a percolator. I've switched back to one. I can link mine. I love it. It takes up maybe half the space of the coffee pot, and it's so tiny and so light, you could just quickly and easily put it away. It's like the size of a kettle. So simple. Number 4 is if you have too big of a bed. And I know that a lot of people love to have king beds. I'd actually be curious to know what kind of bed you have, what size you have. My husband and I, we've always had a queen bed, and I feel like it's a slippery slope. You maybe want some more space, and then you're going to pull in a king bed. It's just going to take over your room. Our bedroom is pretty tiny, and I feel like if we put a king bed in there, it would completely make the room feel even tinier than it is. I'm going to say, if you have a small room with a really big bed in it, I'm going to say consider downsizing. I do think you could get used to it really easily, and it kind of goes both ways because I just find it funny when my husband and I stay in a hotel and we stay in a king bed. I always feel like he's 10 miles away when we're sleeping. If you enjoy content that helps you simplify your home and your life, you have found the right place. Click the subscribe button below. It's free. This next one, I used to really want it, and I never ended up doing it. And I'm going to say, if you have one and you don't use it, you could probably consider getting rid of it. It is an electric fireplace. I think these are also very bulky, and I think they take up a lot of wall space. And the other problem is if it has a mantle on it, it takes up even more space. If you do want something, I think you can consider a smaller fireplace. They also have the wall hanging fireplace. I think that's cool. I mean, I love the fireplace vibe. So if you do have one of those big bulky ones, and you don't use it, consider getting rid of it. Don't get mad about this one because I know people love these. And it really does depend on how big your room is. I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you want more space in your rooms. So I'm going to say if you have a really bulky recliner, no hate on Lazy Boy, they make great furniture, but they're big and they're bulky and they take up a lot of space. And I do think too that sometimes they are the one piece in the room that visually weighs down the room. So if you've got this nice room and you want to have an accent piece, say that is like your fireplace or maybe it's an accent wall, a lot of times that lazy boy is going to steal that thunder. What I would say is if you do need a chair, consider a smaller accent chair, perhaps something a bit smaller that just doesn't create this visual bulk. I am all about health, as you know, if you've watched some of my channels. However, I do think that if you have in maybe a room that you use often, if you've got a treadmill or an exercise bike that you're not using, the problem with these, they're great if you're using them, but if you're not using them, then it's essentially like having a huge piece of furniture in that room that no one's allowed to sit on. It's just giant and unused, and it takes up space. So either move it out of that room if you can, but I know that's probably not an option for a lot of people because who has an extra place for a huge exercise bike, right? Maybe sell it. Maybe consider getting something smaller or getting outside, just doing some exercising outside. I like to take bike rides outside. I like to walk outside. I do have a walking pad. I actually got it for my daughter for Christmas. So we've had it for almost 9 months at this point. We love it. She stores it under her bed. It is tiny. I can link it if you're interested in just seeing what it's like. But when it's raining or it's really cold out, that walking pad has been fantastic. So I learned this one the hard way. I wanted to have a lot of small tables in my house. I figured, I could decorate them. It will look nice. Well, guess what? I put them out in the past and I decorated them. And then my entire family decided that these were now new spaces for their stuff. And so they started putting all kinds of things on these surfaces. So I find that if you have lots of small tables in your home, it's just another flat surface for people to clutter up. If you have this problem as well, consider getting rid of the tables. I've done that. I already talked about the coffee table, but you could also get nesting tables. And then that way, they usually come in packs of 3, and then you've got one table with 2 underneath it in case you need some extra tables in a pinch, but it's not an open surface for someone to put clutter on. Kind of along the same lines, I also find that things like footstools and ottomans, maybe if it complements your decor, but a lot of these single-use pieces of furniture like a footstool or an ottoman that's solely there to put your foot on, I just don't like it, especially if you have a smaller space. I think that it takes up a lot of space and it's just really not useful. I do have, and I can link this, I have this up here. It's kind of large, but I do have, like, for example, this is an ottoman that I have up here, and then it has storage. You have a small space, a storage ottoman is awesome. So at my front door, I have a couple of ways that I store shoes, and a lot of you have commented you're surprised at how I do it, but there is a method to my madness. I do not like the look of lots of shoes on a shoe rack. So many of you have told me to get shoe racks. I hear you, but I hate them. So I'm going to say, if you do have lots of shoe racks with shoes on them, I think it could be making your space appear small and cramped and cluttered. When I see lots of shoes, and they're usually haphazardly done on a rack, it's just visual clutter to me. What I did instead is I had an old buffet cabinet in my kitchen. I ended up repurposing that as sort of the entryway table, and then it has storage inside, and that's where we store our shoes. Now, this is the thing that people comment on. I also have a basket for shoes. It's just a wire basket. Everybody can throw their shoes in there, and it's so much better. I, for some reason, cannot get my kids to open up the buffet cabinet and put their shoes in there, but I can get them to throw their shoes in the basket. So it's a win-win for everyone. I don't have the look of shoes everywhere and the cluttered mess that's cramping up the space, and the shoes are put away. Kind of also along the same lines while we're on entryway, I am going to say as well is if your entryway is too overdone, and I'll explain what I mean, because have you ever walked into someone's house and it just feels really cramped and crowded? This happens to me sometimes, and often it's because they may have big bulky furniture. They may have lots of things on that furniture. They may have lots of hooks with coats and things hanging, so you kind of walk in and you feel a little claustrophobic. The problem is entryways are often tight to begin with, and then when you put in these solutions, it just makes it even worse. Instead, I would say go for a slim bench, especially if you have a narrow entryway, which honestly most of us do, and just try to figure out how you can make that space a bit lighter, because when you first walk into your home, that's where it's going to feel cramped and crowded, and that's going to set the tone for your whole night. On to number 12, and this one is the cluttered chair, and usually these are in bedrooms, and I'm totally guilty. I used to have one, and let me tell you, when I got rid of the clothing chair in my bedroom, it forced me to now hang my clothes up every day, and it is so much better. I no longer have this chair with a huge pile of clothing that I then once a week have to go through. I would suggest get rid of your chair, and if you do need something for your clothing, maybe think behind your bedroom door. You could just put a hook, and that's where you can put your clothing. At least then it's not cramping the space, it's not making the room feel smaller, and it's kind of out of sight. So we are kind of living dangerously over here, but I only have one set of sheets per bed. I don't think that's the best idea. We've kind of run into some problems with that before. So I do need to get new sheets. I've just been lazy and not bought any. But I'm going to tell you, if you have too many extra sets of sheets, it's going to make your space look small. We were just at my mother-in-law's house for many weeks over the summer, and she has an entire wall cabinet full of sheets. I want to say maybe she has 30 sets of sheets and pillowcases. Maybe more. And I know she's been collecting these for years, but it's a lot. If you've got something similar, I think this is just making your space cramped. It's taking away your storage ability. I'm not saying to only have one set of sheets per bed, but maybe 2, 3. I think that's good. Okay, so if you have seen my videos, you know I'm not a huge fan of area rugs, and a lot of people always comment about this, but a few things. I think that they're difficult to clean. You need to take them outside, shake them out. You can't really vacuum them because they get sucked up. I also think they're often visually like lots of colors. And most importantly, I think they're a tripping hazard. I have tripped over them many times. What I'm going to suggest is it could be making your space, your room especially, if you've got them in a room, looking cluttered, looking crowded, looking small, because it visually breaks up that floor space. And when you've got a lot of mismatched colors, it does the same thing. So I'm going to say, get rid of those rugs, have your floor nice and open, or if you want, just get a bigger rug, a nice rug that kind of ties the whole room in together. Works really well. Okay, this next one I also did get from my mother-in-law, but in fairness, she's going to be 89 soon, so she can do whatever she wants. But she has a lot of tiny trash cans in all of the rooms. And I can imagine for her, she doesn't want to walk around the house if she needs to throw something away. But unless you're 89 plus, I don't think you need these, because I think that these just take up floor space. They make the space look smaller, and then you have to go and empty them. You can't just leave the trash in there, right? What I would suggest instead, and this is what we do, we have trash cans in each bathroom. Maybe one day I'll get rid of them. For now, that's what we do. And then I also have a big trash can in the kitchen, and then we empty that once a week. It works for us. It's a big trash can. There's 5 of us. We also have recycling, so that kind of helps. But I'm just going to say, if you've got lots of trash cans, maybe consider relegating them to the bathroom and the kitchen. Okay, we are getting there. This next one is one that looks bulky, but it also covers your natural light, which I'm a huge fan of natural light. You need natural light. And the thing that could be making your space look smaller is if you've got bulky window treatments, curtains, drapes. But I have a good solution. What I find is if you have highly contrasting drapes or curtains, then sometimes I think they make the space appear smaller. I don't know what it is. When I changed my curtains in my living room to a color that matches the wall paint, it opened up the whole space. Again, I have a tiny living room, so I really need all the space I can get. And somehow the non-contrasting curtains did wonders. I have this next one, and I put it in the video because I think it's starting to make my kitchen, we're back in the kitchen, I think it's making the counter look cluttered, and I haven't gotten rid of it yet, but I'm just going to share what it is, and I'll tell you why I think it's clutter now. It's my bread box. I love my bread box, okay? I've had it for a long time, but I've kind of started to realize that most of the time, there's no bread in it. Actually, sometimes there's bread, but in addition to that bread, we keep things like cough drops, school papers, things that we don't know where they go. We just stuff them in the bread box. So at any given moment, you could open up that box and then you see a bunch of junk in there, not bread. So if that's happening to you, and I need to consider getting rid of this myself, maybe consider just putting your extra bread away, storing it in your pantry. If you've got leftovers, you could freeze it. Just something to think about. My bread box is big. It takes up a lot of that valuable counter space. The next thing that could be making your space feel cluttered, and this is kind of maybe in the dining room, it could be the living room as well, but it's extra chairs. especially extra dining room chairs. I kind of did this. I went thrift shopping a while ago and I found this $4 really nice wooden chair. I came home and my husband was like, "What are you doing?" But it's been sitting in the corner of my dining room for maybe a year at this point and we don't use it. Sometimes I put extra things on it, but really this just in case chair, if we have extra people coming over and I need it, it's just not been used and it's just creating clutter. It's making the room smaller. Okay, so I love plants, but something that I do think that some people accidentally do this is if they have plants in pots that are too large. They sell huge pots. A lot of the times these are for like outdoors, or maybe if you have a sprawling suburban home, it could work. But these pots are really large. And most of the time, the plants that people put in them, it doesn't need such a large pot. And then what that large pot does, it just creates a lot of bulk in your room. So you've got it in your home and it's taking up a lot of unnecessary space. It also makes the room look busier than it needs to be. So I would suggest going for pots that are the right size. Make sure you can size appropriately for the plant and possibly hanging your plants. I love the look of hanging planters, and those are totally on trend right now, even though I don't know why they'd ever be non-trendy, but hanging those plants looks awesome. Okay, so I shared this in a previous video and I'm gonna throw it in here as well because I do think that a lot of people have these and it's big, bulky speakers. The huge ones that we used to have back in the day. I'm gonna give you a caveat though. If you use them, that's fine. My dad has some speakers like this. They're awesome. He uses them. That's fine. But if you don't use them and they're just taking up your space, you don't need them. Instead, you could do something like we did this with our TV. We put in a sound bar a couple of years ago. Sounds awesome. We also have a little Bluetooth speaker, which sounds really good. Even outside, you'd be shocked at how far the technology has advanced. But I'm going to tell you, if you're not using those big speakers, they do take up a lot of room. You may want to consider getting rid of them. One of the things I've shared in a lot of videos is that a lot of small things creates visual clutter. And the thing about it is when you have clutter and you're creating clutter, that's what makes your space feel small. If you do things very well and you take out all the clutter, it's not going to look tiny anymore. It's going to look the perfect size. So what I'm going to tell you for this one, the small thing that's creating clutter is if you have a lot of framed photos, especially if you've got them covering your walls, covering your surfaces. Back in the day, maybe in the late 90s, I feel like everybody was doing this. And still, some people are still doing this. And I think it could be causing clutter. It could make your space appear a little bit cramped. So if you're looking to open up that space, maybe consider moving to a digital photo frame. You guys have shared this. I think it's a great idea. Essentially, it's a digital photo frame and you upload on an app all your photos and it rotates through those photos. You can even connect with other people so they can upload their photos. One of you said that your son or daughter, I think, puts photos of the grandkids. And so every day you wake up to new photos. I think that's awesome. I know that books are a hot button issue, but if you have overstuffed bookshelves full of books that you're not reading, I'm going to tell you to consider getting rid of them. I think what you can do is go through your books, keep the ones you love, keep the ones that you want to read again or that you feel attached to, but try to get rid of the others. I actually did this in my basement maybe 6 months ago at this point, maybe even longer, and I gave away 100 books at least. I had so many boxes of books that I took to the thrift store. It was awesome. I felt so good giving those books away. I hadn't looked at them. They were dusty. I wasn't reading them. And the bookshelf looks so much better. And guess what? I don't miss them. I am not sitting here kicking myself for getting rid of some of those books. I'm happy that someone else is now reading them, hopefully. A lot of people still have bulky media. And I'm talking about CDs and DVDs. And if you're not using it, you're not watching it, you're simply just putting it in a corner, you're displaying it somewhere, I'm going to tell you to consider digitizing it. Take that media and put it online. Put it somewhere accessible where you can still watch it, you can still listen to it. I know this isn't possible for everyone, but I am going to suggest it if you've got a lot of DVDs and things like that because that stuff takes up so much space. The next thing, and this pretty much will take up an entire wall, And it's if you have a huge entertainment system, a huge entertainment center, or maybe you've got a big TV stand. Heavy furniture just eats up your space. We kind of talked about that a little bit before, but especially with those entertainment centers, they're very wide, they're very tall. You know, what I would say is consider hanging your TV if you can, getting a small TV stand potentially. We have ours over the fireplace, which maybe isn't the best idea, but that's kind of where we can fit it right now. And then also in the living room, I also find that if you've got display cabinets that are filled with things, I think it's great if you have things you want to display and you love them. But if it's a small space and you've got the thick wood and the glass, it just can feel heavy. It can feel overwhelming. But what you could do here is you could consider maybe decluttering it a little bit so it's not as many things on display. You could rotate your stuff. I'm not telling you to get rid of your collection. It's just something to think about if you feel like your room is crowded and if you feel like you've got a lot of stuff kind of suffocating you. Definitely these displays are a big offender. Okay guys, well those are the 25 things that are making your home feel smaller than it needs to. And if you want to keep on watching, I did a similar video to this one. So if you liked this one, you're probably gonna like this one. So click on it and I'll see you over there. Bye-bye.